Okay, is everybody ready? My apologies, we are running just a few minutes behind, but we'll go ahead and call the County Council meeting of July 12, 2022 to order. Councilman Reese, would you mind leading us in a prayer?
Yeah. Oh, Heavenly Father, we thank you once again for allowing us to assemble and build in your kingdom. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for everyone who's attending here, all the citizens. And we thank you for the councils here, as well as all those who support us. Father, we thank you for our first responders, and we thank you for the employees that we have to do such a great job for our citizens. Father, we ask you to put your arms around all the leadership here across the country. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. You'll join me in the pledge? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we are ready for the roll call.
Councilman Bowman.
Present.
Councilman Emery.
Here.
Councilman Steele.
Here.
Councilman Alexander.
Present.
Councilwoman Likens.
Here.
Councilman Reese.
Here.
President Gill.
Here.
Are we on live?
Yes, we should be. Okay, now I would take a motion for the approval of the minutes from the June 14, 2022 meeting.
So moved.
Motion to approve by Councilman Emery,
Second.
second by Councilwoman Likens. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? That passes. Next would be the approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting.
So moved.
Motion to approve by Councilman Emery,
Second.
second by Councilman Alexander. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. That passes. Council President's comments tonight. I do want to just clarify the role that we are here to do and the role of the audience and the public. During the last several meetings, we've continued to have issues, and I've continued to receive complaints of members from the council and members of the audience being distracted by outbursts or discussion amongst the audience, interruptions. We, by law, are to hold our meetings in public, and the public can come and observe those meetings. And when we have public comment for new appropriations, things of that nature, the public is definitely allowed to come and speak on these issues, and we want that. What we can't have is continued meeting after meeting after meeting interruptions from the audience, because it makes it very difficult for all of us to keep track, not be distracted, and to do the jobs that we're here to do. It also makes it very difficult on those in the audience that are watching, that are here to observe and to be part of this process. So I would just ask that everybody remember, conduct yourselves in an appropriate, respectful, polite manner. And if you're not able to do that, then we won't be able to have you join us.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
Got a question for you. I want to make a clarification on something in the last month. I want to know when would be the best time on this particular agenda to do so.
Was it to do with the minutes?
Something that was in the newspaper.
Why don't we discuss that under old business? Would that be appropriate?
That'd be great.
Does anyone from the council object since we just approved that agenda? Okay. Okay, next we have the auditor's report.
Good evening, council. Just have a couple of things I wanted to share with you tonight. One is the budget process is now starting. On July 15th, which is this Friday, everyone will have their budgets entered into our LAO software for budgeting and made available to the auditor's office, and we'll start compiling budget books soon after that. If everyone meets that deadline, that is again Friday, 7/15. The budget workshop is planned for August the 9th and 10th, unless you make any changes to that. The public hearing for the budget is scheduled for 9/13, which is at your regularly scheduled council meeting. So a portion of that will be a public hearing for the 2023 budget. And then the budget adoption will be, is scheduled for your October meeting on 10/11. So that's the process, or that's the budget schedules right now as it sits, unless you make any changes to that. The public hearing and the adoption have already been entered in our pre-budget work that we do for the state. So those are pretty much set. If you make any adjustments, if we could know about that as soon as possible, if you happen to need anything different. And then just a couple balance I wanted to share with you. General fund balance sets at the end of this next claim cycle, which is Tuesday, at $9.5 million. The rainy day fund is sitting at $5,006,000 with an additional $750,000 coming before the end of the year, which will put your year-end rainy day fund sitting at $5,756,363.75. That's all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
Councilman Vaughn, did you have?
Do we have a schedule? Are we doing, I guess since we're on this budget thing, how are we doing it this year? Are you changing anything from last year, or we're going to do the workshops?
We'll do the workshops in public where the office holders and department heads come and
And
present.
is that going to be
their budgets
next
to
month?
us. And so, Rick, what did you say those dates were?
That is on August 9th and 10th. And I think we started those did we start those at 9 a.m.?
Yes.
August 9th and 10th. Is that public too?
Yeah,
Come
that's
to that,
public.
right?
Yeah.
At 9 a.m.
I think we got them done in 2 days pretty easy, didn't we? Everybody
Yeah.
presented during those 2 days, and then you had your public hearing at a different time, which would be the 13th of September this year, and then the adoption would take place on 10/11.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have nothing under communications. Under old business, Councilman Reese?
Yeah. There was a letter that was sent to the coroners, and the newspaper covered it and stated that all the council knew of this letter. And I want to make it clear that I did not know of this letter. And do you know what the letter I'm talking about? The letter was sent to them about the expenditure, the over expenditures, and letting them know that they could be subject to different types of disciplinaries. But anyway, I did not know of that letter, and I wanted to get that clarified, that I didn't know. And if you did send it out, I didn't get it. As a matter of fact, I think Councilman Vaughn called me on it late that night. So I just want to get that clear. I didn't know anything about that letter.
That was sent to all members of the council via the county email. So I'll look into that to see why you didn't receive that.
I think, just a second on there, it got sent to Dr. Abbott's email on a Friday. It got sent to the council on a Monday by you, Councilman Gale. So I opened it up, and the paper said the whole council, but just to clarify, make it simple, I don't know who did that. I don't know who's involved. I wasn't involved in it. Councilman Reese wasn't, and we got the letter on Monday sent to our email. So I wasn't involved in that letter. So I just want to state that I think what he's saying, we didn't know anything about it until that Monday, and it was sent to Abbott on Friday, Dr. Abbott's office on Friday. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. New business, out-of-state travel request. First is Dr. Troy Abbott.
Dr. Troy Abbott, Madison County Coroner. I'm requesting out-of-state travel to go to Las Vegas to a National Coroners Association meeting so that we can get up to the national standards of the coroner's office and proceed to advance the coroner's office of Madison County and the taxpayers to where it needs to be.
See the motion?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead with your question.
I'm assuming, is there money in the line item for the travel? I guess we just.
Not enough money to go to Las Vegas for this event. It's a national event.
How much is that?
$4,000.
What other budget can it come from?
I don't have any more in the budget for that. That's why I'm here asking.
It's typical that when office holders ask for out-of-state travel, they have funding in their budget, or they've made a request for that, to pay for that expense. Otherwise, it's hard for us to approve something when there's no money appropriated to fund that.
You don't have any money, Rick? So they don't have any money? Do you know, Doctor?
I'm usually allowed $1,000 for education, and I have to spend 500 of that for corner association dues.
How many employees are you taking, Doc?
Just myself and the chief deputy,
And how long is this for?
6 days.
And the taxpayers will see a benefit out of this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
What was he doing now, requesting for the funds?
No, he's requesting approval for out-of-state travel.
But he has no money.
The problem is there's no funding to pay for that travel.
When is this?
We are required to have continuing education CMEs, and this will give us an opportunity to get those CMEs in.
So there's credits due with this education
Absolutely.
too, that, what are you accredited to do? Is this the only one this year, or what, I mean, I
We
don't
found out
understand.
about in June for the Coroners Convention. This was initially started in approximately 2017. When COVID hit, the National Association had not gotten full gear and rolling up for its association. Now that it started launch again last year, this was what we were found out about in our Coroners Association meeting in Indianapolis in June, that they were actually going to have a meeting this year, and that's why we wanted to get advanced and get into this meeting.
And how many, I guess, because, how many credits are you going to be awarded to this compared to what you need a year?
It will exceed our allowance of what we need to do credit-wise.
And when is the conference?
Our conference is next week. Well, we didn't have our Corners Conference in the middle of June, so.
No, there was no money advertised.
Have to transfer.
And you have no money to transfer for anywhere? And we don't, it's not advertised.
You haven't advertised it.
Well, it presents a difficulty if we don't know where the $4,000 is going to come from. I suppose it is an agenda item. If there is a motion to be made, we really probably should have had a motion to start our discussion anyway. So if we want to get back to that, if there's a motion to be made, now would be the time.
Made for,
Well-
we're stuck if they aren't.
Yeah, the motion would be to approve, and whether that failed or succeeded would determine whether.
But we had to figure out where
It was
the money
approved.
come from. We could do that. I make a motion that we approve the request.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by
Second.
Councilman Reese. We have a second by Councilman Vaughn. Okay, now would be
Discussion.
appropriate time for further discussion.
I hate just, the only thing, if it wasn't for the accreditation, that's the only thing that,
What
Could-
other accreditation, Doctor, can you get besides from the conference? Obviously,
This
there's
is
other
the
things.
accreditation.
The
This
only-
is what everyone
The
is
only thing
moving
available
for.
for you all year?
It will not be available. We got to go and get the certification information.
What other CREs can you get elsewhere?
This is their conference.
I didn't ask about this conference. I asked elsewhere, anywhere under the sun, anywhere in the state, on your own, online.
The state had a conference in June, and then the national conference to get national accreditation, which is what we are striving to do, is only at this time.
when do you need these by?
Well, if we're going to move forward with national accreditation, then we need to expedite things as fast as possible to get this moving forward, because we're not meeting standards in this county.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
my only question is, was the $4,000 advertised for 10 days?
No.
Then I'm not sure how we're making a motion to approve if it's not been advertised for 10 days.
And Ted can correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt as though there's an item on the agenda, we make a motion, and if a majority of the council feels that there's an issue and believes there's an issue and votes no, then that would put it to rest.
Can
If
we
a majority of the council would vote yes, then he would be approved for his out-of-state travel with no funding to pay for it. So that's the situation we find ourselves in.
State law requires that it's advertised for 10 days.
Right, right.
So the $95,000 that he's requested as part of that is not part of, because he needed education money because we don't have any CME for any of our deputies. It's never been allowed.
Is this part of your $95,000 request in there?
It can be transferred from that if we get the monies.
Well, but that's not been approved at this point, so we have to assume, or we have to act as though that money is not there to transfer.
So do we can move it down, Councilman Gale, and then that way it'd be easier to do everything at once? I mean, if it goes,
Yeah. With a motion and a second, Ted,
I can withdraw it.
if we were to,
You can postpone it to a time certain.
Yeah.
You can postpone the consideration of the question until after the new money.
There you
okay,
go.
and does
Yeah.
that take a motion to do, or do we just state that we postpone?
It takes, there's been it would take a motion.
Okay.
Since it's on the agenda, we need to move it.
Okay,
make a motion that we have moved it down to his next item we get to it, or next thing on the agenda, we move that to down.
Postponing, you're postponing
Postponing.
Or
until
post,
new money request
right,
following the foreigners.
postponing to new money request that's been made, and then postpone it to after that.
Second.
okay. All right, we have a motion and a second to postpone it until after the new money request, which I would pencil that in if this motion passes for basically right before salary ordinances. Is that what you're thinking? All right, is there any discussion on this?
Quick point. Wasn't there a motion on the floor? The first one I had, do we need to withdraw that one?
Motion.
Withdraw.
approved. Was there a second?
There was.
I withdraw.
Will you willingly?
I'm willing to withdraw.
Withdraw.
All right.
So we need to
that's
get that
Withdraw the
withdrawn.
first motion, right, Councilman Reese?
Okay. Okay, then all in favor of postponing this until right before the salary ordinances, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that motion carries. So we will deal with that here in a little bit. Next is Resolution 2022-7A, Food and Beverage.
Evening, Council. We had an emergency request for funds from the food and beverage account by the City of Alexandria to demolish a structure at 115 West Church and also to remove the debris from that. These funds have been used 2 other times for that, one other time in Alexandria and one other time in Elwood, when they had a structure that fell in on State Road 28. It is a health matter, but it's a lot of other issues there as well. There's enough money in the account to cover it. There's about $700 and some thousand in the food and beverage account as of this morning. Our board approved this at our June meeting on June 2nd by resolution, and there were no dissenting votes at our board in regards to the request. What I prepared for you there was just something that you also had, but you can see the structure with a little red arrow on the front page there, so you can see. And then there's just pictures of the structure. It's gotten worse since these were submitted to me by the mayor, so you can just see where that structure's at now. It's also included in there the estimate that they had for the demolition, which is actually on page 3. You can see that as well, and then the last 2 pages of the resolution. So the mayor's here as well tonight if you want to ask him any questions.
Which question do you, before you leave? Didn't we do this before, one time?
2 times, and one of the stipulations that's in the resolution is if they recover any funds from insurance or anything else, those funds have to come back to the food and beverage account.
Has that ever happened?
No. Usually what happens is whoever has the buildings may or may not have insurance on them. And then they've tried for years to get funds back from the last time.
Do they
So-
retain the property, that owner?
That's a good question.
He retains that property?
Alan, do you know, or Mayor, do you retain the property once it's demolished?
But it goes back to the owner? That's ridiculous.
You want to go? Do you know?
Yeah. So, once it's demolished, and for the record, it has been demolished because bricks were literally falling during the council meeting onto the street, safety issue. The contractor has not been paid. The owner, we have tried to locate, purchased it via quitclaim deed. The police have helped trying to locate the owner, have not been successful. at least at that time when they bought properties via quitclaim, it requires minimal identification. The address came back to a Dropbox, and we've done what we could do to locate. The police did what they could do. And so in terms of getting ownership of the structure, the best course of avenue is obviously not paying their taxes, so we would love to have it, and we'll probably have to go back to the commissioners and request ownership, be it that way at some point, but we can't just instantly grab it legally just because of that.
Can you place a mechanic's
That's what I
lien,
was gonna ask. Would there
We
be a
can
lien
place,
placed on
we
it?
can place liens on the property.
hopefully to recover some of your money?
So you could put a lien, you say? What'd you
Yeah,
say?
you could put a lien.
Mechanics lien, yeah.
Will you do that before you do the demolition, or will you do it after?
The demolition's already taken
Already
place.
taken place?
Because we
Pretty
had,
much.
we had bricks falling into the
Yeah,
street,
yeah,
so we
yeah.
didn't have a choice
Yeah,
but to wait.
yeah.
It's also adjacent to another structure, so, and there's one right across the alley, so anything that falls off of it potentially could damage the adjacent structures to it.
Is there businesses next to that, Mr. Bridges?
Yes.
And it was damaged.
It did.
Bricks went through the roof of the building next to it.
Okay.
Make a motion approved?
Second.
A motion to approve by Councilman Vaughn, a second by Councilman Reese. Is there any further discussion?
Can I amend that? Can I amend that? As long as you gotta get the money, get the property back.
Well,
Get the property.
I'm sure they will do everything they can to do that,
Money,
so.
they get to run with the property.
All right. If there's no further discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The motion carries. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have some transfers tonight that have been presented. Would there be a motion on transfers?
Mr. President, I make a motion to transfer in mass as presented.
Okay, we have a motion to approve in mass by Councilman Emery. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Alexander. Any discussion?
I'm not gonna hold it up, but I hate doing this. But I'm not, I hate doing this, but massive, and I know you do, Councilmember, but I just want to make my opinion known.
All right.
Go ahead.
Thank you. All in favor then say aye. Aye. All opposed? That motion carries. We also have some new money requests. The first chunk of them are from miscellaneous funds, grants, things of that nature. And then we have a few items from the general fund and one from the correctional lit fund tonight. So now would be the time, if you're a member of the public and would like to speak to any of these new money requests, I would ask you to come to the podium, state your name and address, and then keep your comments to about 3 minutes or less.
It'd be a jail project.
No, I'm sorry. I meant to get with you on that, and I totally failed to. So we'll try to work on that for next month. Yeah. All right, sorry. And that would be awesome. I'd love a reminder. Thank you. Okay.
My name is Jody Norick. I live at 1020 Winding Way in Anderson. And it's really hard to form a question when I don't know specifically what some of these things are for, so I'll have to ask, I guess, a couple questions on a couple different items. The first one I have a question on is the settlements for the commissioners. It's $175,000. I'd like to know what that's for. And the second thing is the new money for the jail, for the commissioners, also for professional services, $3.8 million. I'd like to know what that's also for.
So my question really is for the taxpayers. I'm Catherine Callahan, and I live in LaPel. I'm not going to give my address out for safety reasons, and I don't think that that's an appropriate request of any citizen to give their address.
That is an appropriate request, isn't it?
Generally, yes, it's an appropriate request.
Okay.
For safety, I don't know that
Okay.
a single female
Proceed.
should do that. But you're asking the community to ask questions on something they know nothing about. This is like asking a judge to give his verdict and then let the attorneys go at it and keep that verdict. I don't know how you can ask people to speak before you've even had conversation. So that's very strange to me. So I don't know how that's even normal, but I guess if this is a dictatorship, it is.
Good afternoon. My name is Alfarina McGinty. I'm the Chief Deputy Coroner with the Marion County Coroner's Office. My address is 5291 Bogey Drive, Indianapolis, Indiana. And a couple of questions that I have are pertaining to the Coroner's Office request for additional funds. And I wanted to know if I would have an opportunity to assist them in discussing their request for those funds. Part of what I'm trying to do with the Madison County Coroner's Office is to help them get up to standard. And to your point regarding the accreditation as well as the CEUs, the state only offers a certain number of CEUs, and when you have a limited staff that can attend that conference, that does limit the number of people that can go to obtain those CEUs. Otherwise, the coroner as well as any other deputies would be in violation of the county code for the coroner's office. The other concern that I have for their office, and we've been discussing, just general practices of how we conduct death investigations to a national standard, and to help you understand with conducting death investigations to the best practice for your constituents as well as for their constituents. I just wanted to see if I would have an opportunity while they're presenting their information to discuss with you and help you understand the things that they're asking for in their budget and the reason why. In Marion County, we get many decedents that are transferred or transported from Madison County to Marion County in Indianapolis. In the county coroner law, there is a provision that says that I, as the chief deputy coroner, the coroner in Marion County, can charge a fee back to Madison County to conduct an investigation on those decedents because the incident occurred in this county, but the decedent died in Marion County. I don't do that. Just because I understand that budgets are tight, I understand that coroner's offices around the state and in the nation typically don't have significant funding to support that. So I eat that cost in Marion County. So I just wanted to make you aware of that and to help them get to the standard of conducting adequate death investigations so that they can provide answers and information to your constituents, which are the families and the communities in which you serve. So I just wanted to see if I would have an opportunity to assist and be with them as they present their proposal for the additional appropriation.
Are we allowed to ask a question?
Not typically during public comment times, it's for the public to comment. But when they come to present, if they would choose to have you come up, then that would be their discretion.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, members of the council, my name is Jim James. I live at 705 Oxford Road, just in the edge of Union Township. And I don't know if this is appropriate or not under all this mumbo jumbo they got here, but how much travel expenses does the county have a year? Do you have any idea, just roughly?
I don't know that we have that off the top of our heads, but I could look into that. If you'd like to leave me a phone number, I'd be willing to look into it and get back with you on that.
Yeah, well, I can catch it sometime, whenever you
Okay.
have there with them, but I was just wondering how much they have a year. I like where they hold these conferences at Las Vegas. They never have one in Harlan County, Kentucky, Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no more comments, first under new money, miscellaneous funds, planning, the unsafe building fund. Sir.
Good evening. Glad to see everybody for the second time. Before you, we have a request for our funds that are allocated to us from the Unsafe Building Fund. We are in the process of looking for a new receipt permit violation program. I know in the past there have been a few requests that have come to you from our previous director for programs for that fell through. We are at a point now where, excuse me, the AS 400 is going to be null and void to us. That's what we use right now. So we are in need of this program. It's a web-based program. It's one of the cheapest ones that we found. I got 3 different estimates for it. So we are asking to have the appropriation from the Unsafe Building Fund to be put into our fund so we can pay for this. It's a 3-year program that we will be tied into. And this would pay for at least the first year and a half of it. We would then have to work around our budget to get the following 2 years paid for. There is another line item of $2,000 that we've put on here as well. That would go for an iPad or some type of a tablet for our county inspector to use that would integrate with this system. He would be able to go out, sorry, got a frog in my throat. He would be able to go out into the field, take pictures, upload it in real time. Violations the same way. When he's out there looking at them and our senior planners looking at him, they can communicate on a real-time basis. It is something that we do need. So we've gotten the approval from the commissioners to have use of that money.
Okay, so both of these line items would be funded by the Unsafe Building Fund then?
The 2,000 would be new money.
It's only the 2,000 from the
Yes.
general fund?
Yes.
And then the 244350 be for the fund that you,
Yes.
Rick?
It's listed under.
$24,443.50 in the unsafe building fund, so, the other 2,000, were you wanting that out of general fund money?
Yes.
Okay, so it was advertised in the unsafe building fund, so you wouldn't be able to appropriate that because you don't have that much in there, so it'd have to be the 24,443.50, is that the total balance?
I asked for assistance on it because I'm still, as I told you guys before, I'm still new to this, so I had Todd Culp help me with this.
Yeah, you would have to re-advertise or do a transfer within your general fund.
For the 2,000?
For the 2,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
You may, do you have anything in machinery and equipment in your general fund right now?
To pay for our truck that needs repaired.
that you just got approved for.
Yeah, we just got approval on that. So, I mean, and our funds are limited. I mean, obviously, we're still sitting with no director. We're still with an interim. So some of the money that we've used that we could have moved around to cover this, we don't have that use because we've had to pay for that.
Can you go another month if we do it, so we do it right? Can we do it another, like
The
next month?
2,000, absolutely, yes. But
that-
we need to get the program. Yeah.
Right, if we approve the program, Rick, we can do that, but then,
You could, I don't know, you don't need the whole 24,000 right now for your.
We need at least 17 in order to get this started.
So you could approve this appropriation to 24,000 and then transfer into your 44,000, that $2,000 you need to cover it all.
Sure. However, yeah,
Can't go over your 24,000. Is that-
absolutely.
Thank you, Rick.
Okay,
Mr. President, I
so,
make a motion to approve line item 39,000 for the amount of $24,443.50.
Second.
we have a motion by Councilman Emery and a
It won't be
second by
24, it'll be
Councilman
17.
Alexander, and that is just for the 39,000 line item, that is 24,443.50. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? That passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
You need a transfer for
Yep.
that 2,000.
Okay.
Mr. President, I'd go ahead and make a motion that we transfer the 2,000 now from line item 39,000 to 44,000 machine and equipment.
second,
Okay, we have a motion to transfer the $2,000 from Councilman Emery and a second by Councilman Vaughn. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, that passes as well. Next, we have Lisa Cannon with IT.
Lisa Cannon, IT Director. This is CUME IT money, which is money that we can't spend if we don't bring it in. And I just want to up the appropriation for professional services. I've had a couple of unforeseen expenses, and I tried to use CUME instead of having to come and ask for new money. I have replaced fiber out at the youth center so that we do not have any weak links. And like she said, the AS400, the data that has to be pulled off of the 400, I absorb that cost. and we have to have a SQL guy come in and do that. So this is just so that I am safeguarded and I don't spend money that I don't have appropriated.
So this is coming out of a CUME fund?
Yeah, it's not general fund.
general money?
No. I
Take
can't
a motion
spend it
to
if we don't get it.
Is that a motion to approve, Councilman Vaughn?
Yes, sir.
Did I hear that? Okay.
Second.
Second by Councilman Reese. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes.
Thank you.
Next, we have Sheriff Mellinger.
Good evening. A few months ago, we applied for a grant that was offered to law enforcement from FSSA at the state level. The grant was to come up with ideas to mitigate some of the sad effects of drug addiction and overdoses. Noblesville and Crawfordsville both have a program which are pretty successful, and we wanted to emulate over here. It's called QRT, Quick Response Team, and the grant funding, and this is all grant funding, is used to hire a coordinator, a person who typically comes from the recovery world, and that person helps coordinate peer coaches to contact overdose victims soon after the overdose. And the reason they ask law enforcement to be involved with these grants is we have that first 911 call information, and studies have shown that when someone overdoses within the next few days that's when they are most welcoming to getting help. And so these peer coaches would meet with them, could be at the scene, but more than likely it's in the ER right after, or even at their home after they get back from the ER. So we were awarded this grant, $100,000, and we're just asking that the grant money be appropriated so we can move on.
How long is this grant for, Sheriff?
For 1 year.
For 1 year?
Yes.
Then whoever hired it just completely goes away?
Yes,
We're not-
strictly a contract. What we're doing, though, is we're working with a couple of other agencies to sustain this program past that year.
Okay.
Because there's other grant funding available to other types of agencies.
Make a motion approved.
Motion to approve by Councilman Vaughn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Emery. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank
Make
you.
a comment, Sheriff. You know I'm gonna make it. You know I'm gonna make it.
Sure.
These people, actually our people, who do indulge in these drugs, get sick, overdose, and now we give them a person to walk them hand in hand and try to help them out, I guess. Does this help in find out who passed these drugs out? Or
We're arresting people every day, Councilman. And I've offered the figures. We are arresting people every single day. The Drug Task Force is arresting very significant dealers every single day. But I've been in public service for a long time, and I'm not willing to turn my head if we have a tool that might bring one person out of darkness. And these programs have been very successful in Noblesville and Crawfordsville, and I'm just asking that we get the opportunity to try them here. I think the alternative, if I may be so blunt,
be blunt.
is to create larger cemeteries, Mr. Reese.
Well, you know, Sheriff, this stuff's coming from somewhere.
And we're doing everything we can, but we're trying to attack this from all sides. And you cannot think that law enforcement alone is going to solve this problem.
Oh, no.
And that's why it takes a blanket approach, and that's what we're trying to do, sir.
Well, thank you, Sheriff,
Thank you.
for bringing this to our community. Next, we have the courts, Jim Hunter.
Good evening, everyone. I have two items here. As often happens for the courts, Brian Williams, our Chief Administrative Public Defender, finds money everywhere. And he has this first item, Title IV-E Foster Care Fund, is an item where we're asking to appropriate $32,000. We've received about $8,000 of the money already, and it is for public defenders to assist in foster care types of situations, hearings, that kind of thing, CHINS hearings. I'm not sure exactly how he's going to use it because he was just notified of this about a month ago. It's something he'd been looking into, but we qualify because we obviously have a lot of kids in foster care. And, Judge Coaster could speak to that better than I could, but I think we've got 500 kids awaiting placement or something like that. It's awful. So to the extent that the public defender can assist with that, that's what this particular money is for. We anticipate getting approximately $30,000 to $32,000 a year. So the request is, the amount we anticipate for an entire year, they transfer it to us on a quarterly basis. So that's all we know so far. So that's the first item. The second item is I have an employee in my office who works as a court reporter for the Title IV-D court, which is the child support court. And she is paid for entirely by the Title IV-D reimbursement fund. So this is an employee that isn't in your general fund budget, isn't in public safety budget, isn't in any budget. They get paid simply because we have a 4D program here that the courts and the prosecutor and everybody administrate. So this is just requesting new money for that, which will be paid entirely by the Title IV-D Child Support Fund.
Okay. Are there any questions?
Make a motion.
Rick, go ahead real quick.
Is that a current employee, or is that
Mhm.
going to be a new employee?
No, it's a current employee.
Okay, and she's already getting paid out of that fund?
Yeah.
Okay, I was wondering if we needed a salary.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Make a motion to approve both funds.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion to approve by Councilman Vaughn, a second by Councilman Reese. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes.
Thank you, everybody.
Next is Health Department, Stephanie Mellinger.
Good evening, Steph Mellinger, Health Department. My new money requests actually were grants that you appropriated for our health department last month. And these are line items or lines to be established for employees to be paid by those grants.
Okay.
Personnel committee approved, yeah.
So these are all, we did that last month. Is that what you-
Well, the grants were appropriated, yes. However, the lines were not yet established, yeah.
Okay. Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve by Councilman Vaughn, a second by Councilman Reese. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? That passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, under County Council, I see my name attached to it. Rick, would you want to explain the 2015 COET sinking fund, just so the council has a better explanation than what I could do?
The 2015 county sinking fund is basically the fund that pays for the payment on the bonds for the dispatch center. So the bond structure itself, I believe, goes on to say within the bond structure or within the bond that these funds are hereby appropriated, but we always put it in your budget anyway, and you vote on it at the end of the year. And it was short $899 of meeting its commitment for the entire year, which is two payments. So it was going to be short paying the next payment. So as we were going through and looking at things, we thought we better put that on your agenda.
Okay.
That's paid for from public safety funds, so it kind of peels off the public safety money that comes every month and goes into the sinking fund, just enough to pay those bonds. So the money's there, it comes in, it's been coming in since 2015, and that amount just, I'm repeating myself, but to pay those bond payments just comes off the public safety fund every month until it reaches, it's set up to come, to add up just enough in time for that payment to be made, and it happens twice a year. It's just a little short.
Okay. Are there any questions?
Make a motion to approve?
Motion to approve by Councilman Vaughn. Second by Councilwoman Likens. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That passes. Okay, now we get to the county council, or sorry, new money request from the general fund. And Rick, I'm sorry, remind me on this first one for the county council. This is COVID hazard pay. There was one employee when COVID hazard pay was paid out in one department that was awarded it that got.
Yes, there was one employee that didn't receive the pay that was within the guidelines to receive pay. So it's one that got left behind.
So this would remedy that.
What department is this?
I don't know what department they were from. There was just one that was short. I'd have to look at that for you. Was it? I'm not sure.
We had one that transferred to another county office, and that's why it was left on.
It was brought to my attention through HR, so that very well may be the case, but it's only one, so if that one's the short one, I'm assuming that's it. I can check for you and see who it is, but.
All right. Would there be a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Councilman Emery.
Second.
Second by Councilman Alexander. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? That passes. Next, we have the coroner's office, Dr. Troy Abbott.
Dr. Troy Abbott, Madison County Coroner. I have a budget line request for professional services for $95,698.71. This year, out of my budget, I have paid $77,065.47 for the 2021 expenses, $624 out of 2020 expenses, $49.94 out of 2019 expenses. And I'm just trying to ask to make my account whole.
How much do you need to get to the end of the year?
Let's go one at a time. Councilman Steele.
Will this get you to the end of the year?
That is my guesstimation at this time.
With how much extra?
No, I think that I will be pretty close to using it. If you go back, when you do the national surveys, you can find out that in 2013, there was a study that showed, and we should expect to do one autopsy per 1,000 residents in this county. And so we should be expected to do 129 to 130 autopsies a year in this county. And that's where we should be funded for. If we had funded for that, we should have about a $212 line item for professional funds. But we don't. We started at 80, went to 140. And we're trying to bring everything up to the national standards where we need to be. And this is where we're at 140. Back in February, I asked for $25,000, try to get me through the half of the year. Then I was going to see where we were at that point, then ask for the second half. But since we're already halfway through the year, I'm going to ask to pay for the stuff here recently and go forward.
How much is this? What's the breakdown? This is the 95,000.
Yes,
698.71. What is the breakdown for? Did you give us anything, or am I missing, or, I mean, what's the breakdown? Councilman still asked you, would this get you through the year for autopsies, is that correct? Or what is the breakdown of the whole 95,000, I guess, that's what I'm.
Well, the whole breakdown, the whole 95,000 is 77,065.47 plus 624 plus 49.94. And then I have an X-ray bill from St. Vincent's from 2018 through 2021 for $13,015.24, which makes a grand total of $95,698.71.
So you're still getting bills from prior years?
Yes, sir.
Rick, could I ask, does the auditor's office have a bill from 2018 from the coroner's office? Do you know? Because we appropriated a significant amount of additional funds in '21 that was supposed to pay It was the dollar amount you asked for to pay for all the 2018, 19, 20 bills.
Those were paying for the autopsy funds. It's not paying for these x-ray funds. We've had to dispute the x-ray funds on certain ones and had some of them deleted because we didn't find that they were appropriate, and this is a negotiated price that we've come down with St. Vincent's.
This is different then.
But the auditor's office doesn't have these bills?
They were submitted last fall, and no additional monies was given to us, so therefore it was returned to me, and so now I have to ask for those monies now at this time to pay for those.
You have those?
With me?
I mean,
Yes, I have them. I have them at home. I don't have them with me, no.
They were about 13,000.
Yes, 13,015.24.
That's about what the encumbrance we set aside for you and you never put in for.
I had $77,000 in bills at that time,
We're not
70,000
I'm
at that
talking
point in
about the
time.
encumbrance. We set aside, transferred some money so you can get about 13,000 in encumbrance, but you never applied for.
And the encumbrance money was not going to meet the expenses that I had outstanding for the months of October, November, and December of last year. Every year, we are underfunded. Every year, we have to come back and ask for monies, and every year, the last 3 years, the previous coroner was not, had to roll over expenses. And so I'm trying to make this account whole and trying to get everything caught up, and that is what I'm trying to do.
I'd like to know what you need to get to the end of the year. And
That's $95,698.71.
That's including your 4,000 you need for travel.
I think so, yes.
this is included in that.
Yes.
I think part of the problem is you keep bringing up expenses from previous years and looking at the requested budget from 2022, what you would have submitted in 21. For professional services, the submission was $80,000. We chose to up that to $140,000 because we knew you would be short, because based on historical data, every year, that over the last few years, that's about what the county had been spending. And so instead of doing additional appropriations, year after year, we went ahead and gave you that additional, even though it wasn't asked for. I asked for some additional data. The amount of money spent by the coroner's offices from professional services based on the invoice date. This isn't past invoices from previous years that were paid in 2021. This is invoice date of 2021. That was roughly $250,000. Every previous year, it was $150,000 roughly. And so in 2021, your office generated $100,000 a year more in expense than what had been historically happening. So it's
Historically,
hard
we were
for us to again blow the budget wide open. When you asked for 80, we gave you 140, and now we're getting back into what we were dealing with in 21, which was
I didn't ask for 80 last year.
that's what came in the requested
That's
budget.
not correct. That is, previous years were 80. We did not ask for 80,000. We asked for the 140, and we did get that. And you can see that the majority of the monies has been spent already, more than half. I've only spent $57,000 yet this year
You
from the
said half,
310.
77,000 was spent on 2021.
For the last 3
expenses.
months of 2021, trying to get those bills caught up for October, November, and December.
So you were behind, are you saying, without the autopsies, obviously there's other things the autopsies you do affect, like gloves and body bags. Are you saying that all these other line items were shorted?
Okay, so this is the only line item. So anything that's autopsy related, I take out this line item. So I have to do my professional transport, because I got to transport them to the facility, get the autopsy, bring them back. All right? I've got to pay for the physician services. I have to pay for the toxicology. Now, if it's a homicide, I got to pay for x-rays. If it's a murder, I got to pay for x-rays, because the radiologist or the pathologist wants to know what the x-rays are at that point in time. You have to pay for histology. You have to pay for those services as well. This all comes out autopsy-related services from the 310 line. It's all related to the autopsy, and these are services which we have to render.
Mr. Knowlton, would you please step, I got a legal question to ask for advisement, please.
Go ahead.
I'll kind of give you this to, because you're a lawyer. Not. Under Indiana code and that code, are we, it's obviously, I've done a little research and myself, are we under statute, under that statute right there to fund the coroner's office under autopsy line by the state government? I mean, are we under obligation to shall fund that?
Sure, it's the county's duty to fund autopsies, but it's also the county's duty to monitor the coroner and make sure that he's spitting stuff as he should. There's been a lot of case law out there that says just because you're mandated to pay for something under statute, that doesn't mean you don't get a chance to look at it. Otherwise, it would make the council's job superfluous. And so just because we are under a duty to fund autopsies, there's a give and take. The council still has to say, okay, this money's been requested. Is it being spent validly and wisely? So it's not just, oh, I can spend all the money I want on autopsies and you have to approve it. That is definitely not the case.
Ted, while you're up there, the Indiana Code 36214-6E, it's the one I think that you and I had discussed previously. It talks about when the county or when the coroner is required to do an autopsy. There are certain situations where he's required. It mentions when the prosecutor's office requests it, or when there's somebody that passes away that's 3 years of age or younger. So I guess part of to kind of work with Mikhail's question, Councilman Vaughn's question, is there are some times where we do have to, by state law, fund them. But then there are autopsies that are done at the discretion of the coroner. And the coroner's discretion does not trump the council's ability to set a budget. So it's just like any other office holder. We have set a large enough budget to cover the items required by law. And so the office holder has to then work within their budget and live by that budget, or we have issues.
Councilman Gale, and I agree with you. The only thing I don't want, and Mr. Dolting, if you would, only thing I don't want is how do we regulate how many autopsies does? And I get what you're saying, but we can't legally just say, you can do 5 this week or this. I mean, if it's legit autopsy, we can't control how many murders or the prosecutor office need. So how do we?
We set a budget, we appropriate an amount of funds, and then if he were to come to us and say, I've had 50 autopsies that fall under that law where we're required, then we would have to have the discussion of that. But we are not required to write a blank check to any office holder if it's discretionary expenses.
The elected people of Madison County have elected me as the coroner, and the coroner ultimately decides when people need autopsies. That is first and foremost that you need to understand.
Well,
the coroner decides who gets the autopsies. Now, the other thing that needs to be...
Abbott.
No, I'm not, because I'm not done talking
Abbott,
yet. Because the coroner is the elected official. He decides the autopsy, and you have to go along with that.
Dr. Abbott, we can have a discussion without you getting irritated and not allowing discussion. So I was just going to simply point out that you have to also acknowledge, to your point about the voters who elected you to run the coroner's office, those same voters elected the council to set and manage the budget. And so we are trying to find a way. We have done so much since you've been in office to appropriate additional funding every year, to try to work with you on things, and we are trying to respect your office and your position, but we're not seeing that same respect coming towards us. We just simply can't give anybody a blank check, and we shouldn't be asked to. And that's what I feel that we've been asked to do.
Go ahead.
Hi. Thank you for allowing me to come back and speak to you. So I don't think in my discussion with the coroner and the chief deputy that the expectation is that you write a blank check. Typically, what we do as well is we are given a budget, and it is up to the coroner to determine what deaths warrant an investigation as well as an examination. It will only take one time for you to miss something where a decedent dies and you miss it as a homicide, that's going to impact the prosecutor's office. That's going to impact your entire county. So what the coroner's office job is to determine in what cases is an examination required and in what cases is an investigation required. And so with that, we never know what that looks like. I'll tell you from our perspective in Marion County, we project every year about a 20% increase in death investigations. And that's actually across the nation that we're seeing these types of death investigations as it relates to homicides and drug overdose deaths that the sheriff just spoke about. So when you have a non-fatal overdose situation, typically that does turn into a fatal overdose death. And so those require a forensic examination. So the expectation is that, yeah, we all want to see lower numbers of death investigations, but we still have to go into each of those deaths to make sure that we are not missing anything. So it's not about a blank check, and it is trying to live within the means of what our given budget is. However, when you go into these death investigations, you don't know what the cause and manner of death is. That's the purpose of conducting these investigations. So on all homicides, suicides, motor vehicle accidents, drug overdose deaths, all of those warrant an investigation, and you just don't know to what extent it's going to require an autopsy or not. A COVID death, we conduct investigations on COVID deaths as well, especially if the person dies at home. Because until they're tested, you don't know if they are COVID positive or not. That would cause and contribute to their death. So that's how those deaths are determined, in what direction you're going to go in that investigation. And so I hope that helps to explain. Right now, what I see is their numbers is 53. So typically, to project we're right at June, so another half of that is going to be an additional 53 deaths that they will have to conduct investigations on based on the projections of the previous year, which was pretty high, to conduct those examinations and autopsies, unfortunately. And we wish that we could have fewer, because that would mean less work for us. However, just to make that decision, you don't want to get it wrong for the families, and you have to give the families the answers that they're asking for. So just to see the increase from 26% to 23% from the previous year, and then to 19% where we already are, you can expect to double that in the next half of the year.
Ma'am, I have a question. So the data that we retrieved from 2021 was that the coroner cases, the number was 229, and the autopsies was 129. And so I think that would be like a 56%. Does that?
It looks like the total cases from the sheet that I'm looking at, I'm not sure if you all have this, the total cases in 2021 was 547. Now, a case could mean you go out, you conduct the investigation, but you may not have to do an autopsy if there's enough evidence from the scene to determine a cause and manner of death. But I'm showing the total number of autopsies was 128.
Okay. Now, would you determine a case to be a call to a coroner?
Yes. A call, yes, to go and conduct an investigation to figure out what the next steps are, what you need to do to determine the cause and manner of that death.
So we had, I think, 571 calls, but only 229 death certificates from our health department.
Mm-hmm.
So would the 229
So actually, they did, of that, 128 were actually autopsies of that death certificate number.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. So would that be the average of then 56%? So there was only 229 coroner cases?
No, they had a total of 547 cases overall.
Where they're getting information is from the health department. The health department's getting the information, but they're not getting information directly from coroner or me, from us. And so they don't have set ones. What I have started doing is that some people that dies of a natural death at home, we allow the physician to sign the death. Why? Because it's very important for the physician who's been taking care of them for a number of years, that knows all the other medical problems that persons have, so that we can have good health data for our health department, as opposed to just saying everybody died of a heart attack, acute coronary syndrome. You need to have good health data, and so we have a lot of private physicians signing death certificates they didn't have. The Indiana State Department of Health called our office and wanted to know, how are you getting so many of your physicians signing up? Because we got them, called them, and made them sign up, made them sign the death certificates. We led the state last year under the new drive system. And that was an an accomplishment in its half for that. But we have physicians signing natural deaths, and that's important for our health for Madison County.
Which is good, because we have physicians that are not signing. And you still have to conduct an investigation in order to determine if that physician should be signing that death certificate. So that is actually good data.
I have a question. You sound very knowledgeable.
I've been with the coroner's office for 26 years.
Oh, wow.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Ma'am, have you looked at their budget at all since you're helping them?
I have.
Do you feel they're underfunded?
Yes. But
By how much?
it happens to all of us, really,
Right.
around the state. It happens to all of us because we try to make a prediction of how many deaths there will be. Just like probably the sheriff tries to make a prediction of how many arrests there will be, and you base it on a prediction. And if you are making a prediction based on historic numbers here, in looking at their past numbers from 16 to 20, those are extremely low. And if they're adequately conducting thorough death investigations, the numbers likely will be high, because they should actually, and I've spoken to them about this, they should actually be bringing in the drug overdose deaths to rule out other causes and manners of those deaths. So adequate death investigation means you have to go. How else will you know why a person died without conducting that investigation? So, but it's historic across the state, across the nation. Coroner's offices and medical examiner offices are initially underfunded, but we all have to go back. I have to go back as well to ask for additional funding about mid-year to say this is our projection for the rest of the year based on January through June and the types of death investigations that we are seeing. And so I'm working with them to also be able to provide you additional information on a more frequent basis so that you can see the numbers for yourself as opposed to the one time come and ask. And that's typically common among, most agencies across the nation.
And the dirty word is, I don't want to say the dirty word, but I'm going to say it. What's the repercussions of, if we don't fund it, could there be several lawsuits come?
I'm afraid to say yes.
Have you had those?
Yes. Because if you miss something from one of your constituents, they're going to call you and say, why wasn't an investigation done? Why was an autopsy not done on my loved one to determine the cause and the manner of death? Now, our goal is not to perform autopsies on every single death investigation, but those that are suspicious by coroner statute, if they are suspicious in nature, you should conduct an examination on those decedents. Otherwise, the other consequence of not funding and not allowing the coroner to be able to make that discretion in performing autopsies or not is there's a consequence with regard to the judicial system. And that could be bigger than even you if something is missed. And I mean, at this point, could a murderer come into Madison County and commit a crime on someone and it be missed? Because we know the coroner's not going to go to that death investigation scene if it appears as though it's natural.
Dr. Abbott, how much in current bills that need to be paid do you have that would come out of the professional services?
Probably about 15,000.
Okay.
I think part of the problem with, it's not a matter of arguing whether you need autopsies or not. Your autopsy percentage of the cases you take have increased over the prior coroner, which that's a matter of style. Take your data. I've looked at it. As a percentage of the cases, not all death cases. We're just talking.
Excuse me, ma'am. Just so we're clear, are you engaged as the coroner's attorney? I just trying to figure out who everyone is.
Yes.
Okay, by the coroner personally, or by the coroner as a county elected official?
I'm engaged as the attorney as the elected official coroner. Is that what you mean? I don't know what you mean.
Yes, but that would be a contract that would have to be approved by the commissioners, and funding for that would have to be, that would come out of professional services as well, but since there's no contract.
There's no contract, you can't get paid from professional services line item.
Okay.
So you're doing this pro bono?
I don't believe that anybody's ever submitted a bill.
So you're doing it pro bono?
If you're doing it pro bono, if you're engaging a county office, you have to have it approved by the board of commissioners.
Can she do it by pro bono, it's just for legal terms? Is she allowed to say, I'm going to do it for free to help out elected official?
She's still
Has to be in a
representing
contract.
county officer.
Okay, should be in a contract.
My point is that we know you're doing more, but there's been extenuating circumstances over the past year. The problem is when you have $77,000 of bills from 2021 that you held and carried over and then continued to spend, and we felt like we were put into a shotgun wedding. You're going to pay these, I'm the coroner, I'm going to do it. That arrogance, the lack of running your office.
It's not arrogance. What it is I'm just trying to clean
No.
this up. I have a
When the
letter from
sheriff-
Ben Gale
can
that
I
stated that he
explain
wanted to
that
do
the
an
sheriff-
investigation to make sure all these funds were paid for previously, and that investigation never did. Instead, there should be, I asked for a separate line item in June of 2020 so that we could have all these old funds paid for. And no separate line item was ever created to do that. You just put it in my fund, and then you want to demonize me to make it look like that I am asking for extra fund and spend,
When you
which I am
spend
not. I am just trying to do this.
$49.49
Now,
and
this-
say I'm paying bills from last year, that's a little
We've
bit
been,
you're taking advantage.
we're trying to clean. We are not taking advantage of
77,000
anybody. We are doing
was a
our job
carryover.
to make sure that bills are paid for. We are obligated. It is a crime if we do not submit the bills, and it's a bigger crime if you don't pay the bills that have been outstanding for years. These have been
But you have to
been
come
asked for
before the
us.
council and work with us, like the sheriff, when we went through the jail overcrowding. We were in constant contact. I'm having to spend money. That means we work together, doctor. Not a.
I mean, this coroner's office has not done things like Alpha said. We have not been doing autopsies or any examinations. We've been trying to keep those expenses slow as we're trying to bring this up to speed to where it needs to be. But we need to start be doing more investigations as opposed to the 128 or 129, as you say, because we need to be doing more because we're not meeting the needs of this county and what needs to be done. We have a high narcotic problem in this county, and we are finding more and more information to coincide with what the sheriff said. And we are trying to bring things under control and know what's going on. But you need to do more thorough death investigations, but we haven't been able to do those because we've not been properly funded for years.
To tag on to Councilman Steele's comment a little bit, there's definitely a breakdown in trust. I think that's a big part of the problem here. We had a December meeting. It was a special meeting. We spent a significant amount of time trying to figure out how to get some of your bills paid. You had 13,000 something left in your budget, but because of the timeline on when things have to get submitted and when they get paid, it just simply wasn't going to get through the process through the end of the year, or by the end of that year. So we asked you to work with the auditor's office to get an encumbrance in place so that would preserve that $13,000 that you could have used this year. Maybe it wouldn't have paid for everything, but it would have paid for part of that. And instead...
And what happened to that money that didn't get encumbered? Did it go back into the general fund?
It reverts. Instead...
But you said you were going to submit that encumbrance, and you didn't.
I did submit the encumbrance.
No, you didn't.
No, you never
You
did.
sent us an email with a picture claiming you submitted
I
the
submitted
encumbrance.
I submitted on the date
I
set by
said
the
here
20th.
it's recorded, and when I asked you
I
in
had- I sub-
January,
I
you put your
submitted
head
it.
down and shook your head no.
I submitted it. I submitted
it
on the
was-
20th.
It was...
Submit a claim or encumbrance?
A claim for the encumbrance.
We
I said,
no.
give me the money for the encumbrance,
We
and I
told you
submitted the claim on the
specifically An
20th.
encumbrance had to be submitted
And
to work
That was
with.
it. I have not seen a policy procedure manual for filing an encumbrance.
We simply asked you to
You
meet
need to
with
start
with
learning
the
how to run
auditor's
an office.
office, and the auditor...
Start learning how to run
Right.
an office and work with people. We are willing to work with you.
Instead...
But you have to also work with those willing to help you, instead of casting them off if you don't like what they say.
Instead of doing what we asked you to do, which was to meet with the auditor to go through the encumbrance process, the next day, or a couple days later, this was actually December 21st, you sent an email, copied me on it, to a woman by the name of Michelle with one of your vendors, NMS Labs, I believe it was. Michelle, I did go to the county council about this, but Ben Gale, county president, taking with Anthony Emery and Rick Gardner, county auditor, chose not to approve the funds to pay this bill at this time, even though I made it clear as the urgency is needed to be paid, and it was not for my time in office. They voted not to approve the funds. So this will have to be addressed in 2022 when they release the new monies. But my budget doesn't allow me to pay the bills from the previous administration when I do, so that am way over budget and not responsible. So I will have to pay my bills first before I can pay the previous coroner's bills. I apologize that I do not have the funds to cover another coroner's debt, but I will keep working on it. Mr. Emery stated in the meeting that things work very slow in government. My apologies. Now, a couple of issues with that email. First of all, in 2021, we had appropriated significant additional monies to cover the past due bills. Secondly, you claimed that myself, Anthony Emery, and Rick Gardner chose not to approve the funds. Rick Gardner's the auditor. He doesn't approve funds. That's the council's job. It also takes more than 2 members of the council not to approve funds. You then, on, let's see, this was from December 12th. I tried to secure this payment last Tuesday. This is another vendor, community hospital, it looks like, in front of the county council, and with the auditor, President Gale, along with the auditor and other select county council, have decided that the $2 million they have in the rainy day fund account is not a means to give to the coroner's office to pay bills, so that this time we will have to wait until the next year. So I would anticipate towards the end of January, you will have your payment. You go on. And, you know, again, it's just simply not factual the way that you are communicating what happened in that meeting. We were doing what we could, what was within our power under state law at the time, to try to help you with a portion of your bills that were due. Instead, what we find is that you go and even throw the auditor, who has nothing to do with appropriations, under the bus. That doesn't communicate to us that you want to have a collaborative working relationship. This is a culture that you have established. I met at a private residence with you when you first came into office. I tried to offer help. Others have tried to help. And this is the kind of stuff that we get in return. And so we're trying to figure out, how do we pay for those autopsies that the prosecutor's office needs? How do we make sure we're in compliance with state law? But you've created a culture that just doesn't encourage many of us to feel that we can trust the information you're giving us. I think it's that simple at this point. So I would encourage you to work on repairing relationships, learning how to work with the council collaboratively, instead of always trying to go to battle. I mean, we gave you, by percentage, we gave you more money in additional appropriations in 2021 than any other county department by percentage.
And I was starting from scratch too, wasn't I?
The predecessor was getting the job done as far as we know. Now, there were some sloppiness, there were some past due bills, and we gave you money to pay for that. But you keep bringing those past due bills up. Well, they should have been paid for in 21 when we gave you the money to pay for them. Instead, I look back at your budget request for 22. You know, you put in under elected official line item, looks like about a $17,000 raise for yourself.
No, I tried to make my department up on par with everybody else.
That would have
and
made
it wasn't for myself. I was trying to do everything based upon the par. What I was trying to do was trying to get the
Dr. Abbott,
exempt employee up to the minimum $35,000 that your HR department has told you that she needed to be at
Dr.
for
Abbott,
that. And then based upon the percentages, my rest of my deputies would be at 90% of that base pay. And then based on the other elected officials, they are at 117% of everybody else. And so therefore, I was being consistent with every other department in this county.
Again,
and I think that's trying to get everybody to meet the standard of
Dr.
law.
Abbott, again, going through and just lecturing isn't helping with a conversation. What I was referring to was your request for line item 11,000 elected official, which would have been your pay. And had that been approved, you would have been the highest paid coroner in the state of Indiana.
No, I wouldn't have.
That's based on the data that we looked up. That was true.
60,000?
Got a question?
Our coroner's part-time, so.
Right, and in many cases, that's the case.
Yeah. Hamilton County's at 80,000.
And that may have gone up
So,
this year,
and
that
the
was
reason why
based
it's
on
at 60,000
2021.
is because I have an MD after my name, which is a 1.5 times salary.
Right.
But if you would look at the actual corner salary, it was 40,000. And at 1.5 times salary, it put me
The
at
point is
60,000.
how much
No, the
you
point
make.
is,
No,
the point is I'm
what
trying to get
you're
the office where it
compensated.
needs to be appropriately, instead of having it on a shoestring budget. I mean, the coroner's office has not been doing proper death investigations, I feel, and I think that it needs to be moved forward. I think that the health of this county would improve if we had us a morgue, and there's a law in there that states that we're in violation of, but we need to be doing all this stuff to make sure.
I believe there are only 4 standalone morgues, is what I was told by the Hamilton County coroner.
Mr. President,
Yes.
if I may, I would just like to interject one thing. There are policies, procedures, and even state requirements in place on how the council conducts business and approves funding. I take exception to the email that you just read for the December meeting because the coroner's office failed to request and advertise the appropriation at the December meeting for 10 days. Therefore, by law, we were unable to approve that money. That's the reason we asked him to file the encumbrance and put that in place so that we could pay it come the January meeting, so that by law we could advertise it for 10 days. We've seen this on several occasions where there's just lack of following the proper procedures. Just tonight we have another one where there's $4,000 request put before us for a out-of-state travel that's taking place next week.
Right.
This has happened several times with this office. And again, you have to do your part, Dr. Abbott, and your office has to do your part and follow those policies, to follow those laws that state that you have to do the appropriate timelines, doing the appropriate request, or we can't approve it. But because you didn't follow the procedure and we didn't approve your request back in December and then write an email that myself and Ben Gale, by ourselves, 2 members of 7, refused to pay your bills. Again, I take offense to that. The auditor's office has numerous times given you information on what the procedure is and how to do that. The few times that you come before us where we've had this situation, we've told you that there has to be a 10-day advertisement done to meet the legal requirement to be able to do new appropriation, but yet time and time again, and just like tonight, you come in here and you do it again. You did it last month. You've done it several times.
Last month, the request was at 5 o'clock.
Mr. President.
So one second here. Ted, Councilman Emery reminded me about the $4,000 travel money. Since this request was general fund for professional services, and it was advertised that way, if we appropriate new money from the general fund to professional services and then simply take $4,000 of that and transfer tonight, it feels to me like we're trying to get around the law if we were to do that, because it was advertised for professional services, yet now we're going to, or we could potentially use that for something else. Do we need to be concerned about that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, as long as it's done in a public meeting,
Right.
You guys are being open about
Right.
it.
Like a regular transfer, right?
It would be like a transfer. I mean, it is a transfer.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
And the discussion would be no different if it was appropriating 91,000 professional services and 4,000 in travel.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that since we're kind of potentially moving things around, we weren't. gonna
Dr.
do-
Abbott, as of right this second, what do you have in your line item to do autopsy? Do what you need to do to function of the coroner's office right now. Do you know?
For my 310 account, $277.
And something needs.
He has a.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that something needs to be done.
Can-
We're not in contention about
I just
what
wanted to
something needs
know.
to be done.
And there's
But you did
15,000.
submit last month your request for 25,000. You said submitted.
No, my last 25,000 I submitted January 19th for the February meeting.
Wasn't there another 25,000
No.
was submitted?
There was a request at 5 p.m.
5 p.m.
on the day of the meeting.
Right.
That was last month that Todd, I got the email from Mr. Colt. Can I ask, Mr. Gardner, so I understand, because I want to understand, and I want all, we can't do anything to the past. We got to move forward. Is there a separate if I do an encumbrance, or I was elected official, is there a separate form between a claim form and encumbrance form?
Yes,
There
we
is.
pointed that out at
I-
the December
but
meeting.
I'm just trying to clarify.
I'll give you the times. You can go back and see it online.
Okay, I'm just asking for, so they're separate, so if you did the claims, it'd be wrong, because, so, and you understand, Doc Abbott, the difference between that right now, right? I mean, there's a difference between it, there's two different forms. So, right now, I mean, obviously, we're gonna have to, so you're pretty confident that if we appropriate this money, this will cover you to the end of the year?
Yes, sir.
And if not, you would, instead of maybe banging us, that you would maybe,
Just when you foresee something, I mean,
Yeah.
something changes, big ODs or big COVID cases or something, monkeypox, who knows what
Don't
it
say
is going to
mon-
be next.
don't say that, come on, Rob.
I mean, you can only predict with what you know today. And
Got a question?
But when you foresee it and you know that I'm going to be doing more autopsies, you can't wait 3 months and say, I need this right now for stuff I did 3 months ago. It comes down to managing an office.
I got a question.
Councilman.
And managing a governmental office is much different than a practice or a grocery store or another business someone else may run.
One of
Councilman
my
Reed.
concerns is the variable that he's been coming quite often to us, talking about past bills or bills that come from wherever. Are you still receiving late bills or past bills?
I pretty much tried to get everything caught up this year, except for this 13,000, trying to negotiate that with St. Vincent's.
So you still have past bills that still creep
I
up?
have this one outstanding large $13,000 bill that needs paid.
How many bills have you had in the past that, do you have a number that?
I don't have them on the top of my head. I can't give you a quote on that. But yeah, we were paying autopsies for Dr. Sozio and Dr. Watkins and from 2018, 2019, 2020.
Rick, is there a way we could separate, when late bills or past bills that didn't come from his office, generate from his office? Is there a way we can deal with that without coming from his budget?
Yeah, I mean, I asked
Can
for
we
all
do it
those.
on is there no way we can do
Put on a
that?
separate line item.
Would you like to speak on that? Please? Thank you.
We're making a big deal out of something that's really simple. So the county budget's set up by line item in categories that relate to what's happening, what bills are coming in. So you can't set up some line item for some past due bills from the previous year. If you remember, back in December of, prior to taking office, I made a phone call. Actually, I was in my garage working on a live edge table. I know exactly where I was at the time I made the phone call and said, hey, the previous coroner turned in some bills. It's this amount of money. It grew to a little bit larger amount than that. But I've already talked with council president and vice president about getting an additional appropriation to take care of those. So in March, there was a request put in for $75,000 to pay those past due bills. Now, the figure I came up with, I think, was around $76,000, so it would have been a little short of that. Mm-hmm. But then additionally, later in the year, there was an additional $150,000 that was appropriated. But you can't set up a special little account for past due bills. They are what they are. As you leave office, you're going to have your last round of bills. It's going to move on to the other. Unfortunately, there was some older stuff, but and when I leave office, my last round of bills is going to be the next auditor's bills in the 1st of January, unless I have money in my budget and do an encumbrance, which would be the responsible thing to do, and which is what I will do when I leave office. And all offices should do that. They should say, okay, I generated these bills. I have money in my accounts. I've received those services. I've received invoices for those services. So therefore, I'm going to fill out an encumbrance form, which is basically this invoice, this amount, this invoice, this amount, totaling this amount. And then that would go before the county council to be voted on. Those have to be turned in by December 30th, isn't that, Robert?
Right, that's the end of the
Robert,
year.
is it 30th? So then those would be granted or not granted in the January meeting, to accept those encumbrances, and then they would be, if let's say you had a budget of $100 and you had $20 leftover bills, you filed your encumbrance properly, and you voted on it, then my budget would become $120, not just $100 in the next year. That's basically how that works. It's a pretty simple process.
Let me ask it this way then. Okay, we've been paying the past bills out of his previous or current budget, correct? In the past, we've been paying those past bills. Could he come, instead of saying, okay, we're going to pay him out his current bill, could he come to the council and say, hey, I got this bill that come from 1956, and it's X number of dollars. Can I get some money to pay for that bill? Can I get money to pay that bill instead of taking it right out of his line items?
It's going to come out of the coroner's office, just like if I had a bill that came from the previous auditor and it shows up and I can verify that it's something that's due, it's going to come out of my budget. That's just the way it is. There's no, I mean, it's all county funding, it's all taxpayer funded.
Right, but I understand that. I guess what I'm at is, if I'm a department head, and I think it would be a nightmare if I had to deal with, and I don't know how much compared to the amount of money that we allocate or appropriated for his budget. I don't know how much, as far as the past bills to come in, affects his budget, which I'm pretty sure it does some kind of way. Some of those bills sound like they were kind of hefty. I guess I was trying to figure out how do we keep from tapping into his budget so he wouldn't come back, well, you took this out my money.
He's still got to come, I mean, somebody's got to come and ask for it anyway. And,
Right,
and,
and
and I
he
think the
could do
prudent
that.
thing, and if you get something, you put an earmark and say, well, if you come short, we know why you're going to be short. And we've done that in the past.
Yeah, but what you do, you take the money out of his budget, then he has.
Fred, everything has to be appropriated.
I understand that, but I'm saying if he comes, you can pay that differently. You can pay that differently. You don't have to put that in his budget. No. You don't have to take it out of his budget.
No, you got to.
Yeah, you do.
got to.
Yeah, and that
all kinds of stuff
75,000 was granted in March. I don't remember March 8th maybe. I don't remember the date, but it was in March. Do you have that date?
And Rick, real quick, if I can just ask a question.
I can't control what you pay with that money.
Everything but this $13,000 bill that he just mentioned, the council has reappropriated money to pay those past year's bills, correct? So other than the $13,000, we have put that money back into his budget to replenish it for those
Back
past
in March
bills.
of
Yep,
2020.
correct. So other than the $13,000 bill, we've done that. So I just want to make sure we got a note. But I think
Yeah.
to Ben and to Rob's point, I think it's very important that we keep open lines of communication and get updates. I got to give it credit to the sheriff. How many months out of the 9 months out of the 12, he's in here, usually laughing at my request, but in here giving us an update on a month-by-month basis and keeping us abreast of what's going on, because he too has situations that arise where there's increases. But that's the big difference, is the sheriff is in here every month giving us an update, telling us where he's at, where he thinks he's going to be, and then we address those on a month-by-month basis on those overages.
And he's been very good this year.
But we gotta have.
But the year's
we
not
gotta
over,
have
is
those.
it?
Yeah, we gotta have those open lines of communication.
Somebody's going to come for us for gas.
In the interest of time and in the interest of just this continuing just to loop on the same issues, I don't want us to get to that point. The coroner stated he has roughly $15,000 of outstanding bills, and that does not include the $13,000 radiology bill. Was I understanding that right?
Yes, plus moving forward.
Right. So the $15,000, those are invoices that the coroner's office does have. In fact, what we show from NMS and Central Indiana Forensics, that total looks to be $18,475. And I know you're giving a ballpark on that. So I just point that out to make sure that the council knows that what the auditor's office currently has is $18,475 of bills that have been turned in from those two vendors. So we are going to need to do something with that. And those are all from 22. Yeah, they're all current year. In regards to the conference, I did just look here. There is a virtual option for $650 a person. If that's something that can get you the credits that you need, that would be a way to save the taxpayers, a little over $2,000, $2,500 roughly, if that could be something that you could look into. So for the council's idea, if that was something that could work, that would be about $1,300 instead of $4,000. Now the council has to, I think, determine whether we address this by just giving the 95, 698, 71, or do we use those numbers and then set aside an amount to get him through a month or two where he can try to communicate with us? That's similar to what we've done with other offices. So if we want to be consistent, we typically...
Well, we've done it both ways. I mean, they estimate it, and because if it's left over, he can either choose to incumbent or it goes back to general fund.
But
or encumbrant.
at the very least, I guess to pay current bills that we have, 18,475, and then we do need to make sure he has the ability to do autopsies and the things he needs to do when it's needed, when it's required. So we need to set aside some amount of money for that.
Councilman Gale, if I may say, Doc Abbott, I won't forget the past. You know, if you would just do this for the whole council, email us. I know Sheriff Mellinger is really good about, I got an email from him, kind of different throughout my year and a half. If you would just, you know, if you have things come up and maybe put them in a separate, as Councilor Reese said, put in a separate, I got this past due bill, I got this past due bill, and maybe kind of keep us on a month-to-month basis if you're getting an email all of us saying, hey, this is what came in past due, and just keep communication. I think that maybe we can get things a little smoother road, if you would do that, please. I mean, I would like to, and if you would do that. And,
Yes, sir, Mr.
Huh?
Yes, sir.
I mean, because I want this to come together. I don't want to do this every month. So on that, I'll make a motion that we approve the $95,698.71.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Councilman Vaughn. We have a second by Councilman Reese. Is there any discussion?
Question, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Roughly how much a month do you anticipate spending on autopsies moving, just
I have
ballpark?
no idea.
Should
I
I-
have no idea to predict who's going to die, who needs what.
So how do we predict the 95,000 then if we're not predicting?
Because that would give my budget whole, give me 140,000 for the year. Yeah, because we're at the halfway point, and that would get me back where I needed to be.
Miss Alfie, is your name? Is her name
Yes.
Miss Alfie?
So typically how we do that, we try monthly, but things change. So we do from midpoint to the end of the year to make that projection. And again, as you mentioned, whatever is left over can either be encumbered or it goes back to the general fund. So anything extra will go back to the general fund or be encumbered for any additional bills or costs. He could have a mass fatality, as we did. And those costs, you never know what that prediction is. So unfortunately, you know, you like to do month to month, but you just don't know what types of deaths are going to come in each month.
While you're up there, you state you have quite a few years of this experience. Have you had an opportunity to look at our budget, the county's budget, the coroner's budget? Would you say they're in line or they're kind of out of line as far as what you were able to
I think they're
observe?
underfunded because I mentioned to them that I think they're missing some death investigations as it pertains to what could be suspected as drug overdose deaths, but it could be something more serious. But I am going to be working with them on the budgeting, as well as we work with our auditor's office as well for encumbrances and just identifying what those costs are so we can get those encumbered or they can get them encumbered. And then flat out, here's what it is that we have encumbered for these professional services. And it's generally the same. So when you look at the operational cost across the board, it is autopsies, transport, storage, all of those things go into those professional services. And you can only predict and hope that you don't go over what your prediction is for the remainder of the year.
We should have had her a year and a half ago.
I want to say I appreciate you.
I'll be working with them. I mean, I go through this just because typically offices are underfunded, so we oftentimes have to go back. But it is a matter of communication, sharing information. I can't tell you how many spreadsheets I've given to my council, as well as to the controller's office, so that they can see the numbers. When you see the numbers and you can see what's actually being done, then it's easier for you to really address that and identify where the spending is within the agency.
Thank you.
Okay, so is there
Got a
any,
motion.
do you have a question, Councilwoman Likens?
Yes, I do have a question. I apologize if you addressed this, but you did receive approximately $76,000 once you came into office to take care of all the past bills. Is that right? Well, I know you
Not all the past bills,
received that.
because you're
Just
still trying
some
to
of
get
them?
bills, and bills will come in at various times throughout the
Okay.
year, so you didn't have all the bills at that time. But that covered the initial bills that we had at that time.
That's what I'm trying to understand. So the bill that you just told us about was from 2018?
It's been ongoing. We didn't know, we weren't in office at that time. We had to look up the autopsies. We had to negotiate with them to see if they needed to be done. Why was this actually one? I mean, there's a few things that weren't appropriate on there, that were from hospitalized patients, because they initially were stabilized in the emergency room.
You would have just gotten, okay, so it's not like you've been hanging on to this bill
No,
this whole time? Okay,
no.
that, I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Does the state have, this is my question, does the state have a criteria that determines when an autopsy should be done? And I've asked this question before because you have made this statement that it's done at your discretion. And I think that with you being a medical doctor and having other friends that are medical doctors, and you're curious about some sort of research that might determine a certain cause of death, with you making that determination, it does open Pandora's box to say, hey, well, I want to do an autopsy that just because I want to do it, and that's when you're talking about doing autopsies on patients that, as we had this conversation in the past, that died in the hospital with COVID, and the hospital did code it as a COVID death, and it was already determined to be COVID, but you felt it was necessary to do further research, and we had that conversation.
I don't think.
And you told me publicly that there were cases that were COVID-related deaths, they died in the hospital, and you still did an autopsy.
No. I've done 2 hospitalized autopsies on patients that were hospitalized. One of a hospitalist called me and asked me and discussed this, and a relatively healthy person passed away. And
That was the example you told me. There was a healthy person that died with COVID, and you
did not know why, but it wasn't COVID-related. That one wasn't. And then there was another gentleman here recently who had passed away, and Dr. Mars, the critical care pulmonologist from St. John's, asked me to do another one because he said, I did not know why this person died, and we need to know why this person died. And so we did an autopsy because Dr. Mars personally asked me and reviewed the case and decided to do that. But that's the only 2 hospitalized patients that I've done.
Well, to me, I thought that the prosecutor's office had certain stipulations on, we really need an autopsy on this to determine a cause of death for the judicial process that they were going to have to go through. It seems to me like the state would have some sort of guidelines that a coroner should respond to and say, well, here is a reason for an autopsy, and have those listed out, rather than just opening up the door that you just make a decision.
There's a statute, we're handing it to you, there's 5 lists there of common things, and the very last one is at the coroner's discretion.
Again, the coroner's discretion does not trump the council's authority to set a budget.
I just wanted to answer his question about the coroner's discretion does not open it up to just autopsies being done on any decedent. Based on national standards, certain types of deaths, the state law does not say do an autopsy on this case or this case or this case, other than a homicide and a child death. So those 2 are automatic. The others are based on, can you determine a cause and manner of death without an autopsy? Can you rule out any and everything else without an autopsy? Not for research purposes. Hospitals can do that. But to determine what you're going to put on that death certificate, an autopsy would be requested for those to be done. There are national standards, and I will be happy to send that to you so you can see what the national standards are when you should do an autopsy. And where they are lacking behind, as well as our office, is because there are so many drug overdose deaths, you should perform an autopsy on all drug overdose overdose deaths. But because of limited budgets, you cannot do that. However, an examination and an investigation needs to be done on those.
I would say as a matter just of conversation on the motion, my personal view would be that I'm simply just not willing to give $95,000 at this time. I think we need to do something, and obviously the motion is there. We will vote on the motion. But again, in 2021, invoices that were generated from professional services was roughly $250,000 from the coroner's office. That was a very, very striking increase. And so we keep talking about past bills, past due stuff, and then we talk about the 70-some thousand being rolled over. Well, the 70-some thousand that was rolled over to 22 was rolled over because there was $250,000 of invoices generated in 21, which was a very significant increase. And so, you know, it's hard for me when I see that kind of increase, and when, you know, before I discuss the culture that's been created, the working relationship here, you know, again, we have the sheriff come back month after month to do bits at a time. We've done the same thing with the prosecutor's office. And I personally just don't think it's prudent for the council to give $95,000 at this time. I think that, you know, when you look at the bills that are standing right now that need paid, the 18,475, you look at, you know, what's it cost to get through another month and a half or so. You know, maybe that's another 15,000. So I would like the members of the council just to consider whether this is the appropriate course or whether we need to go a different direction on this.
Councilman Gale, I agree to, the problem is, what number do we set it at? I mean, here's the thing to that, and
well, that would be our discretion.
Well, no, and I understand that, but here's the thing. If we did that, I mean, what we're saying is we have several departments come up here, which I hate it, that we spend money every month, and we're supposed to set a budget for the whole year and not get into it, and live within the budget like we're preaching. So, only I'm afraid of if we don't, I mean, and to be fair, I paid attention to council meetings in the 90s, 2000, after 2010, and we need to figure out and work with maybe Miss Anita? Alfie, sorry, Ms. Alfie, to figure out what's the best budget for this county, being 13th largest county, but in the state of Indiana, and figure out a good budget going forward. But I mean, we're saying, you know, we're kind of giving permission to spend. I'd rather set up the 95 so we don't have to deal with it no more.
My fear is if we give the 95, it'll be gone in 2 months, 3 months, and then we'll be back here having the same conversation.
Let me say.
Can I say, Mr. President, I don't have a problem giving 95,000 as requested. We're going to see during the budget hearings the same day as our next council meeting, as just requested. If you can keep us informed, how are you doing month to month? And I don't have a problem with that. If we're holding you accountable, you are holding us, they're giving us information as we requested. And we'll see if it's getting steered in the wrong direction.
And I was going to say pretty much the same thing, and I'm glad to have Ms. Alfie here because that helps them as well. Here's a person with experience beyond. So I feel confident that what they're presenting is what they should be presenting. We have had some issues in the past. Hopefully moving forward with the communication, we do better in the communication, keeping the council aware of what's going on, that we can move on. And I think we've made a great step today. And I think if we approve this 95,000, we'll be moving on. And if we have an issue, we'll deal with it when the time comes.
Call for question. Roll call vote, please.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Councilman Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilman Emery.
Yes.
Councilman Steele.
Yes.
Councilman Alexander.
Yes.
Councilwoman Likens.
No.
Councilman Reese.
Yes.
President Gale.
No. The motion passes.
Thank you.
We have a couple questions, Doctor. We're
go ahead.
going to address the travel expense with transfer. How much would you like requested from a transfer request now that you have two options?
The two options, the reason why I would like to go there is because of meeting people like her and with a president of the association and developing that relationship so that we can move this forward so we can get accredited faster. I think the tools are going to be much better for us to get our accreditation if we are present. And we can work there with them and get that. Well, we've met the president of the organization, and Dan came out and spoke at the Indiana State Corners Convention in June, and she's going to be speaking there as one of the speakers. And I think that's good relationships you should build to bring the coroner's office where it needs to be.
Is that prudent for taxpayers?
Yes. Yes, I think it'd be money well spent.
And this is the only conference you're going to go to?
Only
rest of the
conference.
Year, so there'll be no more travel money?
No, this is really the conference to go to.
The only thing I hate to do is not to let anyone, I mean, because we approve it's a little more expensive like when it's clear out there, but to keep someone from education and this is the only conference.
So you're requesting the 4,000?
Yes, yes, sir.
Mr. President, in light of other offices that come and requested proof of out-of-state travel, I don't see any difference in this one. I would make a motion for the $4,000 transfer for out-of-state travel.
We have a motion by Councilman Emery, a second by Councilman Reese. Is there any further discussion?
Transfer to? If it's for travel purposes, it should go to the 39,000.
Travel and training.
There we go.
Right.
So hopefully now we know what to get rid of on social media and say when we've done it.
Oh, yeah, we still will. Okay, is there any discussion about the $4,000 transfer for travel requests? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. That motion carries.
Someone vote no?
I have one other question, Doctor. I've asked you this question before when you came in, and when you first came in, you were excited about explaining about some of the things you could save and do and run better your department as previous administration. One thing you mentioned was getting reimbursed from state autopsies performed from decedents at the state prison.
Absolutely.
And you, last time we asked, you hadn't done anything with that. How have you?
We have. She's been working on that with the warden,
Okay.
and trying to get that done because it's never been done before.
Right.
And he's supposed to get back with us about how we are supposed to
Because
get
that's
that
why
funded through him.
you know, we can get some of this money. I didn't want to bring it up, but, you know, you said you were going to look into that. That's been a year, a little
Yes,
over a
sir.
year. If you can please make that, since we're working with you, if you'll work with us, try to get some of those general fund, or those monies back to pay for the autopsies that we have done. There'll be old bills, they won't want to pay it, but you can explain how it works.
Yeah, that's what we were negotiating, trying to get additional years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Gale?
Yes.
Can I ask a quick question, please?
Yes.
Just so we confirm, to Councilman Reese's, who authorized that letter to Dr. Abbott's office? Who was that? Was that just you and, like, the
That
attorney?
that was the attorney and myself
Okay,
upholding
just
previously passed council policy.
Now, can I ask, I want to ask Mr.
Why, we've got people that have been waiting here. Why don't we move through and get our...
That's a legal question for him, so.
We'll get through the next new money request, which is the commissioners from the general fund. Is Tom here?
John?
Or John? Do you want to? So first would be the settlements, and then you've got the repairs and maintenance, which, do you want to address the repairs and maintenance?
Yeah, sure. The repairs and maintenance, we've been waiting on a check from the insurance company on the crash that occurred at CJC, and we finally had got that. And so it just had gotten to the point we couldn't wait any longer. We were going to have to get some new money and then give you the check back when we got it. But we got it today, so you can remove the $50,000 request.
Take that away.
Yes, please.
John, will that check take care of everything?
Yes.
Good, good.
Yeah. And then under settlements, we started the year
Yes.
with some money. You don't know how many times you're going to get sued or a judge is going to rule against you and what. So it's hard to estimate that. In this case, we already settled one case earlier in the year with one of our K-9 officers in an accident that happened. That depleted that, and this is the PMR settlement that the commissioners passed, and that was in the amount of $100,000. If you want to reduce that $175,000 down to $100,000, that's perfectly fine with me, and we'll come back and if something else pops up, ask for more money at that time. Tom put that in there just to replenish it back from that first lawsuit that we settled.
We expect probably more claims are going to come, John?
There are two more and possibly a third one out there. And of course, you guys all know and probably read it in the paper about the prisoner settlement. And so that's the one when you guys get that.
Be more than that.
Nobody's going to be happy about that day. So.
Are there any questions then? If not, could we get a motion?
Yeah, well.
I make a
Are
motion
we going to do it all?
Councilman Alexander is making a motion. Go ahead.
to approve the new money request for the commissioners.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second by Councilman Steele.
Roll call vote.
Is there any discussion?
Mr. President, if I may, I just want to state that talking to both the commissioners and council's legal representation, they have stated that approving this and moving forward with this is definitely the best viable option for the taxpayer, that this is definitely going to be the lesser of the two amounts, should we choose to go the other direction with litigation. So in light of that, then I would call for the question.
Okay.
Thank you, Anthony.
And Councilman Vaughn, did you call for a roll call? All right. Rick, would you mind?
Yes. Councilman Vaughn.
If I sustain, this is why I wanted to say something. Now it's hard because I can't say what.
Go ahead and vote, Councilman Vaughn.
Okay. I don't have enough information. No.
Councilman Emery.
Yes.
Councilman Steele.
Yes.
Councilman Alexander.
Yes.
Councilwoman Likens.
Yes.
Councilman Reese.
No.
President Gill.
Yes, that passes. Next, there's the jail construction new money request, which this would come from the lit, correctional lit that is being collected for this purpose, so.
And that is the estimated amount that you would receive this year. Obviously, you can't spend anything that does not come in. We are under contract now with RQAW as our architect, and they began that process. We're also in the process of trying to purchase land for the jail. So we've got expenses that'll be forthcoming, and this gets us that start.
Is there any, this is a lot of money.
That just so you can recall, that's the only, you guys passed this tax. That's the only thing this money can be spent on is this jail.
Right, I understand that, but
So-
is there, do you have any costs that you owe?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. So we're just kind of,
You're putting together a budget so that we can move forward.
and.
Basically, we're breaking the lit revenue into line items so that it can be expended.
As the bills
So
come.
you can't, if we appropriate this, you can't spend this unless you get approval, right? Any
No,
line item.
it would be budgeted.
We don't know any of this stuff, what's going to be paid for right now. I mean, if we approve this, you can get up to whatever.
There's a contract with the architect, so we know what that will cost. No, we do not know what the property will cost. There are
What's the
appraisals for that, and that's what this money is for. There's only so much money and a couple different ways that the county can go about purchasing ground, and you can't exceed that. So
Is there, how much is the contract with RKW?
$1.8 million plus.
And that's the only contract we have so far?
That's the only contract at this time.
But there will be other contracts
Yes.
potentially by the end of the year, which is why we would.
Yeah, there'll be, once you've got the site, then you have site development, engineering plans, and so forth that goes along with that.
I'm going to make a motion to pay the 1.8 million to RKW at this time.
That isn't all due at one lump sum, they just come in. And
I
so-
just don't like appropriating something that we don't know we're going in blind. We do have the contract for RKW at 1.8, so I'm going to go that far, but I make a motion that we approve the 1.8. And what, Mr. Knowlton, shake your head no. Oh, I thought it was directed at me, I'm sorry. So I'd like to make that motion.
Everything that goes through this process, we'll go through a process, whether it's purchasing the ground, construction where things are bid out, and at that point, you're going to accept the lowest and most responsive bidder, and your option is not, going to change from that. It's important that we're able to have the money in place to secure these things and move forward in a timely manner. The slower that you drag your feet on this, the more it's going to cost you at the end of the day.
Right.
And we're not talking small amounts. I mean, the more we talk about it and the more inaction that we have on this project, every single moment has a dollar sign attached to it. And just in the last several months, the interstate rate alone will dictate how big of a jail we're going to build. The bond rate is going to dictate how big of a jail we're going to build unless you pull some money in from some other places to get what we truly need and want.
And Mr. President, if I may, John, would it be an accurate statement as well, too, that without you having access to this funds, say that you find the perfect piece of property that you want, all of a sudden you've got to wait 30 days to come back to the council meeting and get an appropriation to go back and be able to do that. You may miss out on that property, or it could be anything like that, or not only the cost going up, but maybe some missed opportunities.
Right, that's entirely likely.
Do you have a property now that we're looking at that you want to bid on?
Well, it's not a bid process, but we obviously do have, as I told you, we are having.
Can you let that out? Where's
Nope.
that? It's secret?
I don't know that it's top secret, but we're trying to purchase a property, so.
Don't want someone driving the price up.
So I guess the way I believe, to think about this is similar to any other budget we have. We have the Commissioner's General Fund budget. We give the commissioners or any other department a chunk of money spread out amongst different line items at the beginning of the year, and they live on that for its intended purposes through that year. And that's what the commissioners are asking for now, just in the jail construction budget. It's not appropriate for us to have you come back for any expense involved in building the jail. That would be a ridiculously inefficient process and would in turn slow down and cause the process to get much more expensive. So we have to be careful of that.
And there are portions of this. I mean, this is the just getting started phase. So, when you budget and bond for the construction and all those other things that you're going to roll into it, that's when you've got your real opportunity to feel every part of that.
Well, I can say this, my opinion. I'm going to watch this very close. This can go over $100 million. I guarantee it's going to. It'll go over $100 million. And I'm going to watch every penny. And I got to be accountable because I got to vote on it. No matter if it was Commissioner Richline, no matter if it was whoever was up here. This is going to be a huge project.
Don't know where you're going to find $100 million to build a jail, because it doesn't exist in this
It's already
county. So-
$87 million.
No, it is not. We don't even know
It's
what
not?
the hell it's going to cost.
Right, there's no budget set because we don't have.
There's not even there's not even a set of architectural plans in my hand to put out for a bid. So let's not just be passing out information that is made up
It
someplace.
was in
I
the
don't know where
paper,
the-
John.
All right.
It's in the
That's
papers,
enough.
man.
Councilman Steele, did you have something?
Motion to amend.
Well, he's got a motion. Is there a second?
Yes.
Councilman Vaughn and Councilman Reese second.
If you wish to make a motion to amend, you can.
I wish to motion to amend to the original requested amount
Okay.
Second.
in full.
So there's a motion to amend by Councilman Steele to adjust it back to the original amount. There is a second by Councilwoman Likens.
Point of order.
Yes.
You will be voting on the motion to amend.
Right.
Not the adoption. So if it passes, then you vote on the original.
Then we basically vote on it again, yeah. Okay. Is there any discussion about the motion to amend?
Just want to make sure Steele is the first and.
Likens. Mhm.
Roll call vote.
Okay. Rick, would you mind doing a roll call vote on the motion to amend?
Councilman Vaughn,
No.
Councilman Emery.
Yes.
Councilman Steele.
Yes.
Councilman Alexander.
Yes.
Councilwoman Likens.
Yes.
Councilman Reese.
No.
President Gale.
Yes. Okay, so the motion has now been amended, and so now we have to vote again on the amended motion to adopt this. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, we have a request for a roll call vote. Rick, would you mind?
Councilman Vaughn.
No for the taxpayers.
Councilman Emery.
Yes.
Councilman Steele.
Yes.
Councilman Alexander.
Yes.
Councilwoman Likens.
Yes.
Councilman Reese.
No, because I am a taxpayer.
President Gale.
Yes, that passes at the amended amount. Are there, I don't believe we have any salary ordinances. Are there any committee
Councilman Gale,
reports?
who's on the committee for the jail on the council? Do we have that?
I'm not certain that
We don't have
exists yet.
Is there a
So
jail committee?
we'll get to that.
Commissioners.
Are there any committee reports? Okay, if there are no reports, I'd accept a motion to amend,
So
or
moved.
to adjourn. Yeah.
Amend the adjourn.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
We need to sign one thing.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
We gotta find out if they're, okay, one here.
There is
Let me make sure. Make sure. Sorry, guys, I wanna make sure I get my